We were at my son's 9th birthday backyard campout. My brother walked past his new $500 drone, stepped on it until the wing snapped, and said, "Oops, poor boys don't need flying toys." My son just stood there, staring at the broken propellers. I picked up my brother's $2,800 fishing rod set and threw it into the fire pit. Oops, grown men don't need fishing toys. The propeller was still spinning when it snapped. Not the main rotor, the rear left one. Finn had just set the drone down on the grass next to the campfire ring, battery removed, controller folded neatly on the picnic table the way I showed him. He was being careful the way 9-year-olds are careful with things they cannot believe they actually own. He kept touching the carbon fiber shell with 2 fingers, like he was afraid pressing harder would make it disappear. We had been planning this campout for weeks. Every year since Finn turned 5, we set up a tent in the backyard, build a fire, roast marshmallows, and stay up late watching for satellites. It is his favorite tradition. This year the drone was the centerpiece. He had been asking for one since January, and every time he brought it up, his eyes went wide and serious, like he was requesting something he knew was out of reach. $1,500. That is what it cost me. 4 months of saving the weekend survey jobs, the ones I pick up from small contractors who need aerial footage of their lots before breaking ground. $40 jobs, $60 jobs, the kind my brother Slade would not bend down to pick up off the sidewalk. 4 months of those, stacked in a savings envelope in my glove box, counted out at the hobby shop counter in cash. The clerk looked at the pile of 20s and 10s and said, "Birthday?" And I said, "Birthday," and he put it in a box with a bow. Finn had flown it twice that afternoon, both times for less than 4 minutes. Hadley, my wife, filmed the second flight on her phone. Finn's face in that video is the kind of face you save a screenshot of. Pure, unguarded belief that the world will let you keep the things you love. Then Slade arrived. He was not invited. The campout was for Finn, Hadley, and me. But Slade showed up the way Slade always shows up, unannounced, carrying a lawn chair and a six-pack like every space in the world was built for him to walk into. Corinne, his wife, was behind him with a bag of chips she did not open. Slade walked across the yard. He saw the drone on the grass. He stopped. He looked at it the way he looks at everything that belongs to someone else, like it was in his way, like its existence was a statement he needed to correct. Then he stepped on it. Not an accident, not a stumble. He planted his boot on the center of the frame and pressed down until the arms buckled and the carbon fiber cracked. The rear left propeller split clean off. The front right bent at a 45-degree angle. The gimbal housing cracked open and the camera lens popped free and rolled into the grass. Slade looked at Finn. Finn was standing 3 feet away. His hands were at his sides. His mouth was open, but nothing was coming out. He did not look up at Slade. He was staring at the propellers in the grass. 2 of them. White plastic against green. One was cracked down the center line. The other had a clean break at the hub. "Oops," Slade shrugged. He took a sip of his beer. Poor boys don't need flying toys. Finn did not cry. That was the part that broke something in me. A 9-year-old who has already learned that crying in front of his uncle earns nothing, who has already internalized the family rule that Slade's cruelty is weather, not a choice, and that you stand in it until it passes. He just stared at the broken pieces, and his hands curled into fists at his sides, and stayed there. Hadley grabbed Finn's shoulder and pulled him toward the house. She did not look at Slade. She did not look at me. She knew what I was about to do, and she also knew she could not stop it, and that stopping it would be wrong. Slade's fishing rod set was leaning against the fence. A custom carbon fiber spinning combo, cork handles, engraved reel seat. He brought it to every family gathering like a museum piece. $2,800. He mentioned the price every time someone looked at it, and sometimes when nobody was looking at it. Corinne once told Hadley that Slade insured it separately from their homeowner's policy. I picked it up, both pieces. The rod flexed in my hand, light as a pencil. I walked to the fire pit where the campfire logs were still burning low and orange. Slade was mid-laugh, saying something to Corinne about the drone being a waste of money anyway, that a kid Finn's age should be throwing a football. I laid the rod across the coals. The cork handle caught first. Then the carbon fiber started to warp. A thin curl of smoke, then a pop as the real housing split from the heat. The line melted and dripped through the grate. The engraved reel seat blackened. Slade's laugh stopped. Oops, I did not raise my voice. Grown men don't need fishing toys. For 3 seconds, nobody moved. Corinne's hand went to her mouth. Slade's beer condented in his grip. His face shifted from confusion to something I had only seen twice before in my life. Both times were the night our father died, when Slade realized he could not control what was happening. He stepped toward me. Hadley came back outside and positioned herself between the fire pit and the back door. Loretta, our mother, came around the side of the house carrying a plate of hot dogs nobody had asked her to bring, saw the burning rod and dropped the plate on the patio stones. 3 hot dogs rolled off and landed in the grass next to the broken propellers. Beckett, what did you do? Asked Slade what he did first. Loretta looked at the drone. She looked at the fire pit. She looked at Slade. Then she said the sentence that told me exactly where I stood in this family. The sentence that had been true my entire life, but had never been spoken out loud with this much clarity. That drone was a toy. Beckett, your brother's rod was an investment. $1,500 that I saved dollar by dollar for my son's birthday was a toy. $2,800 that Slade spent on a single afternoon at a sporting goods store was an investment. That arithmetic had been running in my family for 34 years. I just had never heard someone say it out loud while standing in a yard with smoke coming off the coals and 3 hot dogs lying in the grass. If you are new here, welcome to Family Secret Tales. This is the story of how my brother destroyed more than a drone and how I used the same profession he mocked to take apart everything he built. Slade is 5 years older than me. Growing up, he was the one who filled rooms. Loud, confident, always selling something, even when he was 12 and the thing he was selling was an excuse for why he failed a test. Our father, Murray, was the opposite. Quiet, precise, methodical, Murray Stanton spent 41 years as a county land surveyor. He measured property lines, verified boundaries, filed plats with the county clerk's office. He made $52,000 a year at his peak, and he never once apologized for the size of the number. Murray gave me a brass survey compass on my 16th birthday. It was his father's before that. Lester Stanton had used it surveying timber lots in the early 1960s, back when half the work was still done with a chain and a compass and a notebook. The brass was dented on one side, and the glass face was scratched from 40 years in coat pockets and truck cabs, but the needle still found north within a quarter degree. Murray put it in my hand and said, "Everything in this business starts with knowing where the line is." I became a surveyor, not county staff like Murray. I went independent and started Stanton Land Services, a one-man aerial surveying operation. Commercial drones, topographic mapping, boundary verification, construction progress documentation for contractors and municipalities. My annual gross was $88,000. My truck was paid off. My equipment was current. My clients paid on time because my measurements were accurate and my reports were clean. Slade became a real estate developer. Stanton Premier Properties. He bought land, subdivided it, built houses, sold them above market to people who believed the brochures. His truck cost $78,000. His wife Corinne wore jewelry to the grocery store. His business cards had gold foil edges and a tagline that said "Building Futures, one home at a time." When Murray died 3 years ago, Slade showed up at the funeral in a new suit and left before the reception ended. He shook hands with people he did not know and handed out business cards at the church. 2 weeks later, he sold Murray's survey equipment without telling anyone. The total station, the GP's base station, the tripod set, the range poles, the field computer. He posted it all on an equipment resale site and pocketed $4,200. I found out because Palmer Vickers called me. Palmer was Murray's colleague for 26 years at the county surveyor's office. Retired now, 68 years old, living on a pension and a garden. He saw the listing online. He recognized the serial numbers because he had worked next to that total station for over a decade. "Beck, your dad's Thesis 06 is listed for sale. Is that something you know about?" It was not something I knew about. I called Slade. He laughed. It was sitting in the garage collecting dust. "You want to be sentimental about a tripod, be my guest." That was the smaller betrayal. The first proof of the pattern. Slade took what he wanted, and the family adjusted around it like water around a rock, and Loretta watched it happen and said nothing, because Slade was the one who was building something. Palmer came over that evening. We sat on my back steps with 2 glasses of water and the compass between us on the concrete. He held it for a while without saying anything. Then he handed it back and said, "Murray would have measured twice before cutting once. That was your father's whole personality and one habit. Do not lose that." Palmer is the only person outside my house who has ever held that compass. That is how much it meant that he touched it. 3 weeks before Finn's birthday campout, Loretta hosted a family barbecue. Slade was there with Corinne. Their 2 kids, who spent the entire afternoon on tablets, not looking up once. Hadley and Finn. 6 of Loretta's neighborhood friends. People who had known our family for decades. Slade had been drinking since noon. By 3 o'clock, he was holding court at the patio table, talking about Ridgeline Estates, his new subdivision on the east side of the county. 12 lots, custom builds, prices starting at $285,000 and going up to $340,000. He kept calling it generational wealth and tapping the table with his index finger for emphasis. Then he looked at me across the table and said something I will carry in my chest for the rest of my life. "You know what Dad's problem was, Beckett? He spent 40 years measuring other people's land and never owned more than 1,100 square feet of it. And now you are doing the exact same thing, flying toy helicopters over properties you will never be able to afford. Married to a woman who counsels other people's kids because she cannot figure out her own, raising a boy who cries when his birthday balloon pops. You are a carbon copy of a man who died with a truck payment and a survey compass nobody wanted." 6 people heard that. Faye Pryor, who had lived next door to Loretta for 19 years, set her fork down and did not pick it up again. Dale Goss, who played poker with Murray every Thursday for 15 years, looked at Slade like he was seeing him for the first time. Nobody said a word. Loretta looked at her plate. Hadley's jaw tightened, but she kept her eyes on Finn, who was pulling grass out of the lawn 1 blade at a time. I did not respond, not because I had nothing to say. Because I had spent 34 years learning that responding to Slade in front of an audience was the same as handing him a second swing. He wanted the reaction. He wanted me to shout so he could shake his head and tell Loretta later that Beckett lost it at the barbecue. I almost stood up and walked out. But Finn was sitting next to me, his hand on my knee under the table, and if I left, he would learn that when someone says something terrible about your father, you disappear. So I stayed. I let the sentence sit in the air like smoke until the conversation moved on, and I memorized every word of it. After the campout, after the drone and the fishing rod and the smoke, I could not sleep. Hadley was breathing softly in the next room. Finn's light was off. The house was quiet in the way houses get quiet when the people inside them are pretending everything is fine. I sat at my desk with my laptop open, and I was not looking at family photos or writing angry emails. I was pulling county records. Slade's Ridgeline Estates was permitted, platted, and in active construction. The lots were advertised as 2.1 acres each, premium parcels with verified boundaries. That phrase caught my eye. Verified boundaries. Verified by whom? I pulled the survey plat from the county clerk's digital filing system. It was public record. Any licensed surveyor could access it. The plat showed 12 lots, each dimensioned and pinned. The surveyor's seal was in the bottom right corner. Standard formatting. Clean lines. The license number under the seal was 047831. That was my father's license number. Murray Stanton. License 047831. Issued 1982. Expired upon death, March 2023. Marked deceased in the State Licensing Board's database. I had that number memorized since I was 14. It was on every plat my father ever filed. It was on the business cards Murray kept in a rubber band in his desk drawer, the ones he never handed out at funerals. Someone had filed a survey plat for a $3.4 million subdivision using a dead man's surveying credentials. I sat in my chair for a long time. The house was dark. The compass was in my glove box outside in the truck. The laptop screen was the only light in the room. I read the number 3 more times. 047831. Then I opened the State Licensing Board's public database and searched the number. Status: deceased. Expiration: March 18, 2023. Holder: Murray David Stanton. I almost closed the laptop and called Slade directly. But the license number on the screen stopped me. That number was not a family argument, it was evidence. And evidence does not survive confrontation. It survives documentation. I took screenshots. I saved the plat as a PDF. I opened a new folder on my desktop and named it Ridgeland. The next morning, I called Martin Guthrie. I told him I was a licensed aerial surveyor and that I had reason to believe the new subdivision next to his property might have boundary issues affecting his eastern line. Martin said, "My grandfather set those pins in 1971. If someone moved them, I want to know." He gave me written permission to survey his boundary and the adjacent transition zone from his parcel. I drove to Ridgeline Estates before the construction crew arrived. It was 6:15 a.m. Mist on the ground. Dew on the survey stakes. 12 lots carved out of what used to be a hayfield the Guthrie family had held since 1971. Slade had bought the parcel 18 months earlier for $410,000, financed through a construction lender. I set up on the Guthrie side of the boundary and launched my survey drone. A DJI Matrix 350 RTK, not a hobby quad, not a birthday present. Professional grade, centimeter-level GPS accuracy, photogrammetry capable. The same equipment Slade called toy helicopters. 42 minutes of flight time. 218 images. 14 ground control points verified against county benchmarks. Every pass calibrated against the Redecay base station. The data was clean. I processed it that afternoon using my standard overlay software. The same process I use for every construction client who pays me $60 to tell them where their property ends. The process does not care who owns the land. It only cares where the land is. The filed plat said Lot 4 ended at a row of iron pins set along the eastern boundary. My drone data said Lot 4 extended 3 feet past those pins, across the recorded boundary line, and onto the adjacent parcel. The adjacent parcel was still owned by the Guthrie family, who had held that land since 1971. Lot 7 had the same problem. 2.8 feet of encroachment. Lot 9 crossed the drainage easement by 2.6 feet. Lot 11 was worse. 3.4 feet. 4 homes at Ridgeline Estates were being built partially on land that belonged to someone else. And every one of those homes was permitted based on a survey plat filed under a dead man's license number by someone who was not that dead man. If you have been following along and you are feeling the weight of this, hit subscribe and stay with Family Secret Tales. Because what I found next changed everything I thought I knew about my brother. I traced the plat filing. It was submitted to the county clerk by a licensed surveyor named Dawson Pruitt. Pruitt was a real licensed surveyor, active, insured, operating out of an office near the county courthouse. But the plat he filed carried Murray's seal and Murray's license number, not his own. Why would a working licensed surveyor file professional work under another surveyor's dead credentials? The answer was simple once I understood the economics. If the survey turned out to be wrong, if the boundaries were off by 3 feet, if the lot encroachments triggered lawsuits, the liability would trace back to the license on the plat. And Murray's license was attached to a dead man who could not answer questions, could not defend his methods, could not sit across from an attorney and immediately expose the fraud. Dawson Pruitt protected himself by using my father as a shield. I pulled the county filing metadata for each plat Pruitt submitted. The filing agent was listed as Stanton Premier Properties. The project invoices on the county permit applications listed Pruitt as a paid contractor. 3 invoices, 3 separate projects, all billed to Slade's company. The invoices alone did not prove Slade knew about the license switch, but they proved Slade hired Pruitt, paid Pruitt, and submitted permits based on Pruitt's work. The rest would come later, when Pruitt started talking. Then I found the second layer. I ran a title search on Loretta's house. The house Murray built additions onto with his own hands over 20 years. The house where Slade delivered his speech about Dad dying with nothing. The house where Loretta dropped the hot dogs. 14 months earlier, Slade had opened a home equity line of credit against that house. $165,000. Loretta's name and signature were on 2 documents. She had signed them. But what Slade told her about what she was signing and what the documents actually meant were 2 different things. I drove to Loretta's house on a Thursday evening. The porch light was on. The house smelled like lemon cleaner, and the potpourri Loretta kept in a bowl by the door. The same bowl Murray had made on a lathe in the garage before he got too sick to stand. I sat across from her at the kitchen table, the table where Murray used to spread out plat maps on Sunday mornings. "Mom, did you sign a HELOC application 14 months ago?" Loretta's hands went flat on the table. The same gesture Murray used to make when he was deciding how much truth a conversation could hold. Your brother needed capital for the subdivision. It was temporary. $165,000 is not temporary. It is a lien against this house. If he defaults, the bank forecloses. You lose the house. Dad's house. He said he would pay it back within a year. Did you read the documents before you signed them? Beckett, he is your brother. He explained what it was. He explained what he wanted you to hear. He did not explain that the subdivision he used the money for is built on fraudulent surveys filed under Dad's license number. Dad has been dead for 3 years, and Slade is still using his name to make money. Loretta's face changed. Not shock. Something older and slower than shock. Recognition. The recognition of a woman who has been rearranging the furniture around the same broken thing for 20 years and just heard someone name it. He told me he was doing well. He showed me the brochures. The brochures are marketing. The plat is fraud. And your signature is on a HELOC that funded it. Loretta's voice dropped to the register she used when she wanted a conversation to end without resolution. The same voice she used when Slade sold Murray's equipment. The same voice she used at the barbecue. Please do not make trouble, Beckett. Not now. Not with everything he has going on. He is under pressure. He put you under a lien, Mom. He used Dad's name on a document Dad never touched. That is not pressure. That is fraud. I almost reached across the table and took her hand, but the compass in my pocket pressed against my leg, and the weight of it reminded me what Murray would have done. He would have measured the problem. He would not have softened it with a gesture meant to comfort the person protecting the fraud. Loretta looked at the printout one more time and pushed it back across the table toward me. He will fix it, Beckett. He always lands on his feet. He lands on other people's feet, Mom. He landed on Dad's. He landed on yours. The only reason he has not landed on mine is because I stopped reaching out my hands. Loretta did not respond to that. She folded her arms and looked at the kitchen window. The view from that window was the backyard where Murray built a deck the summer before he got sick. Slade had told Loretta to tear it down and put in a patio. She had not done it yet. I left without raising my voice. I sat in my truck in Loretta's driveway for 10 minutes, holding the compass, watching the porch light flicker the way it had flickered since Murray replaced the fixture 6 years ago and used a bulb that was slightly too small for the socket. Nobody had fixed it. Nobody was going to. The next 2 weeks were quiet and precise. The kind of quiet that comes from knowing exactly what you are building and not needing to tell anyone about it until it is finished. My attorney reviewed the documentation on a Monday morning. He read through the plat filings, the licensing board records, the aerial survey overlay, and the HELOC paperwork. When he finished, He set the stack down and said, "How many properties total?" I told him 4. He picked up his pen. "File the complaint. I will draft the civil action for the Guthrie's encroachment and prepare the HELOC fraud referral for the bank. The licensing board and county prosecutor will get a separate referral. Your brother is going to learn that filing false instruments under a dead man's credentials is not a family disagreement." I contacted Adelaide Dunbar at the county records office the following Wednesday. Adelaide was a senior records officer, 22 years in the clerk's office. Precise in the way people are precise when their job is to make sure documents mean what they say. I presented the documentation across her desk, one filing at a time. She pulled the full filing history using the license number and confirmed that 3 additional properties beyond Ridgeline carried plats filed under Murray's credentials. 3 separate subdivisions, all developed by Stanton Premier Properties, all surveyed in the field by Dawson Pruitt, all stamped with a dead man's seal. "This is not an administrative error," Adelaide said, closing the last folder. "This is a pattern. This was not a single mistake. It was a business model." I called Martin Guthrie again and showed him the overlay data. He had no idea 4 homes were being built partially on his eastern boundary. His property was appraised at $320,000, and the encroachment affected his well setback and a drainage easement. He called his own attorney that afternoon. The call lasted 9 minutes. Palmer Vickers came to my office, which is the second bedroom of my house, with a survey map pinned to the wall and a monitor on a folding table. He sat in the metal folding chair next to my desk and looked at my drone overlay data for 20 minutes without speaking. His reading glasses were low on his nose. His hands were steady. Then he pointed at the boundary discrepancy on Lot 7 and said Murray would never have signed off on this. "The pin placements are wrong by methodology, not just by measurement. Whoever did this field work did not follow your father's protocols. This is not Murray's work wearing Murray's name. This is someone else's fraud wearing Murray's license." That was the professional validation I needed. Not from a lawyer, from a man who stood next to my father on 1,000 property lines and knew his methods the way a musician knows another musician's hands. Slade's Ridgeline Estates open house was scheduled for Saturday, July 26th. 12 lots. 3 model homes staged with rented furniture. A catering tent with coffee and pastries. A banner that read Stanton Premier Properties in letters visible from the county highway. Slade had invited potential buyers, local investors, a reporter from the county weekly paper. 34 people were on site when I pulled my truck into the gravel lot at 10:05 a.m. Couples walking the lots with brochures. A pair of investors in polo shirts. The reporter, a woman named Simone, was taking notes near the model home entrance. Corinne was in a white dress handing out folders. Slade was in the center of it all, pointing at roof lines and talking about square footage and equity growth and premium parcels, with the confidence of a man who has never been asked to prove a single number. I parked next to the catering tent. I had a rolled survey overlay under my arm and my laptop bag over my shoulder. Palmer was in his own truck, parked near the access road. A woman named Vera Odom arrived at 10:15 in a state vehicle. She was an investigator with the State Board of Professional Surveyors, assigned after Adelaide forwarded the licensing fraud referral. She carried a manila folder and a stop review notice. Slade saw me walking toward the model home and smiled the way he smiles when he believes he is about to win something. The smile he wore at the barbecue. The smile he wore when he stepped on the drone. "Beck, you finally came to see what success looks like. Grab a brochure." I did not come for a brochure, Slade. I set my laptop on the hood of the nearest vehicle and unrolled the survey overlay across the trunk of the one next to it. The edges curled in the breeze. Palmer handed me 2 paperweights from his pocket. Lot 4 is built 3 feet past the recorded boundary onto the Guthrie parcel. Lot 7 is 2.8 feet over. Lot 9 crosses the drainage easement by 2.6 feet. Lot 11 is 3.4. 4 homes at this site are partially constructed on land your company does not own. Slade's smile compressed. His head tilted. That is ridiculous. Every lot was surveyed and platted. The county approved them. The county approved a plat filed under license 047831. I kept my voice level. That license belongs to Murray David Stanton, our father, who has been dead since March of 2023. The reporter stopped writing. A couple standing near the Lot 5 marker turned around. Corinne lowered the brochure folder to her side. You paid Dawson Pruitt $12,000 in cash across 3 installments to file fraudulent survey plats under a dead man's credentials. Pruitt started cooperating with the licensing board 2 days ago. He produced the payment receipts, your emails instructing him to use Murray's old license number, and every conversation about keeping the liability off his own credentials. You used Dad's license number so that if the boundaries were wrong, the trail would lead to a surveyor who could not answer questions because he is buried in Hillcrest Cemetery next to his father. Slade's neck flushed from his collar to his jaw. His hands went to his belt, then to his pockets, then dropped to his sides. You do not know what you are talking about. Pruitt handled all the survey work. I hired a licensed professional. You hired a licensed professional who filed his work under another professional's dead credentials. And you knew, because you paid him in cash, and you told him in writing to use the old number because it was cleaner. Vera Odom stepped forward from behind the catering tent. She was carrying the manila folder. She did not raise her voice. Mr. Stanton, our office has confirmed that license 047831 was marked deceased and expired in March 2023. 3 separate plat filings submitted after that date carry this license number. All 3 are associated with properties developed by your company. A stop review notice has been placed on all permits relying on these plats, and the board has opened a formal investigation. The couple from Lot 7 stepped back from the conversation. The woman turned to her husband and said, loud enough for 6 people to hear, we put a $14,000 deposit on that lot 3 weeks ago. I want our check back today. Slade's voice rose. His hands were open, palms up, performing innocence for an audience that was already leaving. This is my brother, trying to sabotage my business because I am more successful than he will ever be. This is jealousy. This is personal. It is not personal, Slade. I turned the laptop screen toward the remaining crowd. Aerial footage, my drone data, overlaid on the filed plat, boundary lines glowing red where they diverged from actual construction. This is my profession. I measure where things are and where they are not supposed to be. You spent 5 years calling it toy helicopters. The toy helicopter is the reason 30 people can see right now that 4 of your homes sit on land you do not own. Slade opened his mouth and closed it, opened it again. Beckett, we can work this out. This is a family matter. We can fix the survey, refile the plat. It is a boundary adjustment. It happens all the time. It does not happen all the time with a dead man's license, Slade. Palmer walked up from the access road. 70 years old, clean flannel shirt, reading glasses in his breast pocket. He stood next to Adelaide and spoke once, clearly, the way Murray used to speak when something mattered enough to say out loud. I worked with Murray Stanton for 26 years. The field methodology on these plats does not match Murray's work. Pin placements, traverse angles, closure ratios. This is not how Murray surveyed. These are forgeries filed under Murray's name. Corinne grabbed Slade's arm. Stop talking. We need to call our attorney right now. Slade shook her off. He was breathing through his mouth. His left eyelid twitched twice. The veins on his forearms were standing up above the skin. The reporter named Simone had her phone out. She was recording. You called Dad a man who died with nothing. My voice was flat. Not loud. Not angry. Flat. Like a survey line drawn from one point to another. You sold his equipment 2 weeks after the funeral and pocketed $4,200 without telling anyone. You took $165,000 against Mom's house by putting her name on a HELOC she did not understand, to fund a subdivision built on surveys she cannot read, filed under a license she does not know exists. You used Dad's name, Dad's license number, Dad's professional reputation to file fraudulent plats on 4 separate developments. You built your entire company on a dead man's credentials and then sat at Mom's barbecue and told me that I was a carbon copy of him. Like that was an insult. Every face in the crowd was watching. The investor in the polo shirt put his brochure in the recycling bin next to the coffee urn and walked to his car without turning around. You called my son's birthday present a toy for poor boys. You called my wife someone who cannot figure out her own life. You called my profession toy helicopters. The toy helicopter just showed 34 people that your empire is 3 feet over the line, and every document that built it has a dead man's signature that you bought for $12,000 in cash. That is fraud. That is forgery. That is what this family was protecting while telling me to be quiet. Slade's right hand reached for the model home door frame and caught the edge of the banner table instead. The table tilted, brochures slid off and fanned across the grass. His knees did not buckle, but they softened, and for a moment, he was holding himself up with one hand on a folding table and one hand on nothing. My attorney is filing the civil action Monday. The licensing board and county prosecutor already have the fraud referral. The Guthrie's attorney is filing a boundary encroachment suit. Dawson Pruitt has provided every email, every payment record, and every instruction you gave him about which license number to use. Slade's lips moved. His voice came out quieter than I had ever heard it. I will give you money. Whatever the drone cost. Whatever the rod cost. I will write you a check right now. This is not about a drone, Slade. Then what do you want? A percentage? Equity in the next project? Name it. I want you to stop using our dead father's name to build things that do not stand up. Simone, the reporter, shifted her phone angle. 2 more couples walked to their cars without looking back. A man in a gray jacket, who had been examining the Lot 9 marker, pulled out his phone and began typing. You cannot do this. I am your brother. Dad measured land his whole life. I measured yours. 3 feet past the boundary, every plat forged, every lien built on a dead man's license. Slade grabbed my arm. His grip was weak. He leaned in and his breath smelled like coffee and something sour. I will sue you for that fishing rod. $2,800, destruction of property. And you flew that drone over my site without authorization. That is trespassing. I will bury you in legal fees. I looked at his hand on my arm until he let go. The survey was conducted from the Guthrie property with the landowner's written permission, under my active Part 107 certification. Every image was captured from authorized airspace over authorized ground. And you stepped on my son's birthday present in front of his mother and called him a poor boy. So when your attorney calls mine about a fishing rod, mine will be ready to discuss 4 counts of fraudulent survey filings, a HELOC obtained through misrepresentation, and professional license fraud with potential felony exposure. I rolled the survey overlay, closed the laptop, and walked to my truck. Behind me, Vera was speaking to 2 remaining buyers about the stop review notice. Palmer had his hands in his pockets, watching Slade the way you watch someone who has already fallen but has not yet understood what the ground feels like. Slade, I stopped at my truck door. He was still standing at the banner table. Corinne was in their SUV with the engine running. The lot was half empty. This is the last dollar, the last favor, the last time I fix what you break. Dad's name is not your collateral. Mom's house is not your credit line. Finn's birthday is not your stage. Do not call me. Do not come to my house. Do not send Loretta to ask me to forgive you. We are done. He did not answer. His mouth was open, but the words had stopped. If this story is hitting close to home, share it with someone who needs to hear it and subscribe to Family Secret Tales so you do not miss what comes next. The fallout arrived in the order gravity dictates when the foundation was never real. Slade's construction lender pulled the line of credit on August 2nd. Without active lending, the Ridgeline project stopped. Framing crews walked off Lot 3 mid-wall. The concrete subcontractor filed a mechanic's lien for $31,000 in unpaid work. Slade had already been 62 days behind on his truck note, but the project freeze triggered a cross-default clause in his financing. 3 days later, on August 5th, A flatbed repo truck pulled into the Ridgeline parking lot at 7 in the morning. Slade's $78,000 pickup was hooked and loaded in 11 minutes. The Stanton Premier Properties magnetic signs were still on both doors when the truck went up the ramp. The repo driver left the signs on the gravel next to a stack of unsold brochures. Dawson Pruitt's surveying license was suspended pending the state board's investigation. His cooperation meant he provided documentation of every payment, every conversation. Every email where Slade wrote used the old number, "It is cleaner, nobody checks." Pruitt's career as a licensed surveyor was over. His wife packed their children's bags on August 8th and drove to her mother's house 2 counties away. The office near the courthouse went dark. The sign came down by the end of the month. The social fallout was slower but heavier than the financial one. Slade had built his reputation on visibility. He sponsored Little League teams and put his name on the scoreboard. He bought a table at the annual Rotary dinner. He hosted pool parties with catered food and invited people who had never been to his house before. Because Slade's currency was not friendship, it was audience. The country club placed his membership under administrative review, which in country club language means revoked without using the word. His name was removed from the Chamber of Commerce sponsorship wall at the next board meeting. Nobody made a speech about it. A maintenance worker unscrewed the plaque during lunch hour and put it in a drawer. The County Weekly ran a short article about the licensing board investigation. It mentioned Murray's name. It mentioned the license number. It mentioned Ridgeline Estates by name. 3 people texted me the link. None of them were family. Corinne deleted her Instagram and Facebook within the same week. The Sunday brunch photos, the kitchen renovation updates, the anniversary posts with captions about building a beautiful life together all disappeared overnight. The neighborhood Christmas party list, which Corinne once told Hadley included over 200 addresses, ceased to exist because there was no version of a Christmas card that could explain what happened without admitting it. The bank froze further draws on the HELOC against Loretta's house on August 8th. Once the fraud referral connected the loan proceeds to falsified survey plats and concealed licensing violations, the bank opened a rescission investigation and suspended all enforcement against Loretta while it examined how the funds were used and what Slade had represented to her when she signed. The $165,000 was not erased overnight. But the bank was no longer coming for Loretta's house. It was coming for Slade. Loretta was still living in Murray's house, still sleeping in Murray's bedroom, still using the table where Murray spread plat maps on Sunday mornings. She did not call me to say thank you. She did not call at all. On a Wednesday afternoon in mid-August, Slade was standing in the doorway of the Ridgeline model home. I know because Palmer drove past the site on his way to town and told me. The staged furniture had been repossessed. The floors inside were bare particle board. The banner was still up, but one grommet had torn loose, and the bottom corner dragged in the dirt. Slade was holding his car keys in his right hand. The car was no longer in the driveway. He was not going inside. He was not walking away. He was standing in a doorway in a $400 jacket, holding keys to something that no longer existed, looking at a parking lot where nobody was pulling in. On August 15th, I bought a 3-acre plot at a county tax auction for $47,000. Cash. 6 years of saving. Weekend surveys, evening data processing, invoices sent on time and collected without excuses. The parcel was on a south-facing slope outside town, bordered by a creek and a stand of white oaks. No structures, no liens, no encroachments. No history of fraud. I surveyed it myself before the auction. Every pin was where it was supposed to be. Finn flew the drone that afternoon. Not the broken one. My work drone, the Matris 350 RTK, the one Slade called a toy helicopter. Finn held the controller with both hands and watched the live feed on the tablet screen as the drone climbed. 200 feet up, looking down at the property that belonged to us. The creek catching the light. The oaks casting long shadows. The slope gentle enough to build on, steep enough to see the valley from. The brass compass sat on a cedar fence post at the southwest corner of the lot, catching the last light of the afternoon. It had been in my glove box for 3 years, in Murray's desk drawer for 20 before that, in Lester Stanton's coat pocket for 30 years before that. 3 generations of men who made their living knowing where the line is. None of them got rich. All of them slept well. From 200 feet up, the propellers sounded like a steady hum. Nothing like the snap of the one Slade broke in the grass on Finn's birthday. That sound was gone, replaced by the sound of something in the air that belonged to us, flying over land we owned, mapped by a profession that 3 men in this family chose because measuring things correctly was enough of a life. Slade's phone goes straight to voicemail now. Nobody leaves a message. Loretta's porch light is still on, the one with the bulb Murray installed that flickers because it is slightly too small for the socket. Her door stays closed. I do not knock. The compass still finds north. The lot lines hold. The propellers hum steady.